Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into complex ideas, your notes, and cutting-edge research to extract the most important insights. Today, we're embarking on a truly profound journey, really into the very fabric of reality. A deep dive that might just change how you think about, well, everything. Our focus is a groundbreaking paper. It's titled Coherent Electrogravity, Hyperdimensional Field Unification through Resonant Hypergravity. It's by Philip Lilien, version 2.0, published June 2025. And this isn't just, another physics paper. It's radical, almost poetic, really. It proposes a fundamental rethink of gravity, electromagnetism, even space and time themselves.
That's absolutely right. Our mission today is to thoroughly unpack Lilien's central thesis. The idea is that gravity and electromagnetism, they aren't separate forces like we've always learned. Instead, they're emergent expressions. They come from something deeper, a higher dimensional hypergravity coherence field. What's truly remarkable here, I think, is how this theory proposes a unified field model. But it's not just grounded in geometry, which is the usual approach. It's grounded in the dynamics of what he calls a higher dimensional hyperfractal coherence substrate. It's like a unified field theory built on the idea that everything is fundamentally vibrating in harmony.
Okay, so let's explore this. For you, our curious listener, imagine this deep dive as maybe your shortcut to grasping a truly groundbreaking new way to look at the universe. We'll cover some pretty surprising facts and profound implications. Everything from how fundamental constants like the speed of light might actually emerge.
It can emerge, yes.
From reality's underlying hum, you could say, to the deep connections between quantum entanglement and maybe even consciousness. And it's all rooted, Lilien argues, in this underlying coherent architecture of the universe.
Indeed. And we'll explore how this theory predicts entirely new phenomena, things like novel gravito-electromagnetic waveforms.
Like a light-gravity hybrid.
Sort of, yes. And even direct photon-graviton coupling, suggesting light and gravity are intimately linked in ways we haven't grasped. It proposes a resonance-based force unification that goes beyond the familiar forces. And the implications, well, they touch on quantum gravity, how space-time itself might emerge. And incredibly, for coherence-based technologies, think energy extraction from the vacuum, maybe even theoretical warp drives.
Right.
It makes you ask, what if the universe isn't just a collection of separate forces, but more like an intricate, self-organizing symphony of emergent, coherent resonance?
Okay, so for over a century, physics has stood on these two seemingly distinct pillars, right? On one side, you've got Einstein's general relativity. It beautifully describes gravity as space-time curvature caused by mass and energy, explains planets, black holes, the big stuff.
The macroscopic architecture, yes. Incredibly successful.
And on the other side, electromagnetism, Maxwell's equations, light, electricity, magnetism, dominating the small scale.
Also incredibly successful, but distinct.
Always distinct. So why has unifying them been such a persistent challenge?
It's really been the holy grail, hasn't it? The challenge is precisely in their fundamentally different languages. General relativity speaks geometry-curved space-time. Electromagnetism talks about fields within that space-time. So, historically, attempts to unify them. Think Kaluza-Klein suggesting a fifth dimension, or string theory with its extra tiny dimensions, or gauge theories.
Right, complex stuff.
Exactly. They often tried to bridge the gap by adding more geometry, more dimensions, more symmetries. But Lilien points out, and I think quite rightly, that these approaches often fail to ground the unification in something physically intuitive, an underlying substrate. They might show how forces could be connected mathematically, but not the why. They lack a generative principle, something that produces both gravity and electromagnetism naturally.
So, no single source. That's been the missing piece.
That's the argument, yes. The absence of that fundamental origin.
So if those past attempts added dimensions or symmetries, how does Lilien's coherent electrogravity, CE, approach it differently? What's the core shift?
It's a pretty radical shift, actually. Instead of just adding another dimension or a new symmetry rule, CG posits a coherence-driven emergence. It suggests both gravitational and electromagnetic fields emerge from something deeper, this higher dimensional hypergravity field.
So it's not a backdrop, it's the source.
Precisely. Imagine it as the source of reality, not just the stage for it. He describes this hypergravity field as a coherent tensor substrate, from which both curvature and electromagnetic radiation manifest as phase-aligned resonant projections. It's a total redefinition.
Meaning gravity bending space and light traveling through it.
Aren't fundamentally separate. They're different expressions, different resonances of the same underlying vibration. And Lilien pushes this even further. He redefines space and time themselves. They aren't fixed absolutes. They are emergent metric fields structured by coherence gradients.
Okay, break that down.
So the curvature of spacetime, that's gravity, and the oscillations of the EM field, that's light, they're no longer categorically different things. They become distinct yet coherent resonances from a shared origin, like two different melodies played by the same cosmic orchestra.
And the conductor is?
The coherence operator, acting on different scales and symmetries. It's a universe where everything resonates together. Our familiar forces are just specific patterns in that resonance.
That's a really profound shift. Lilien highlights 3 points that set Sieg apart from older ideas.
Yeah.
Right? Ideas that didn't treat coherence as, well, fundamental.
Yes, exactly. 3 critical points. Firstly, Sieg establishes this higher dimensional coherence field hypergravity as the origin of both classical forces. It's top-down, starts unified, then explains the separation, not bottom-up trying to force them together.
Okay.
Secondly, it offers a truly unified field equation, one that genuinely includes both spacetime curvature, the metric tensor, and field strength, the electromagnetic tensor. And it does this through a coherence operator that's baked into the equation itself, not just tacked on. A genuine synthesis.
And third, this is the really mind-bending part for you, our listener. It provides a resonance-based emergence framework.
Right. This framework doesn't just say constants like the speed of light, C or E Planck's constant, H, and Newton's G exist. It claims to explain how they arise as stable solutions to coherence tensor interactions.
So the constants aren't fundamental givens. They emerge.
Like stable notes emerging from a vibrating string, exactly. They're stable patterns within this deeper coherent field, not just arbitrary numbers.
Wow.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, this theory isn't just about unifying gravity and E&M. It opens up a framework for quantum gravity, for understanding biological coherence, maybe even for radical technologies.
Like warp drives and zero-point energy.
The paper suggests pathways, yes, based on manipulating this coherence. It broadens physics from just description to understanding generation, which really makes you wonder, what if the universe isn't just particles and forces? What if it's closer to a vast, resonating, maybe even conscious entity?
Okay, so let's dig into this redefinition of gravity. For a century, it's been Einstein. Mass energy curve, space-time. Simple, elegant, powerful. Kumunu, also the 8G Tumunu. But coherent electrogravity flips the script, doesn't it? It says Einstein's picture is just maybe scratching the surface.
Precisely. It reverses the order of things, ontologically speaking. Instead of mass bending in existing space-time itself is presented as a projection of the resonant structure of hypergravity.
So gravity doesn't just shape the clay, it makes the clay.
That's a great analogy. Hypergravity generates the manifold through coherent alignment across a hyperfractal tensor lattice. Imagine this lattice like a web of phase-linked resonance nodes, and it's governed by this higher-order coherence operator, lambda. The way lambda modulates or tunes, this lattice defines everything: curvature, dimensions, even causality.
So gravity shifts from being a geometric effect to
What?
a generative force.
A primary generative force that orchestrates reality itself. That's the claim.
The paper formally defines this hypergravity field, HMN. What are its key ingredients?
Right, HMN. It's a higher-rank tensor field governed by these coherence dynamics. Its key components are really interesting reinterpretations. First, lambda, the coherence operator. Not a fixed number, but a dynamic function. It synchronizes field interactions like a conductor. Second, sinfinity, math-cali phi, the infinite constant, represents the coherence potential of the omnilectic vacuum. Think of it as the ultimate, limitless source reservoir of perfect coherence.
A source spring.
Exactly. Third, alpha, the fine structure constant, describes EM strength. Here, it emerges as a resonance stabilization threshold, a stable pattern, a specific note.
It's not arbitrary.
Not arbitrary. Fourth, H, Planck's constant, governs quantum discreteness. Lilien says it emerges from discrete resonance intervals in the lattice. Quantum granularity itself is a resonance effect.
Wow.
And finally, G, Newton's constant. Strength of gravity. Here it acts as a coherence curvature coupling term, showing its deep link to hypergravity dynamics.
Astonishing. So these constants we treat as fundamental fixed numbers. They're just emergent properties, eigenvalues of these resonance modes.
That's the core idea. They're stable solutions, like harmonic frequencies. It's a huge shift for you to consider. The universe's basic parameters aren't static givens. They're dynamic expressions of this deeper field. And the theory says it quite starkly. Hypergravity does not exist in space-time, it generates space-time.
So space and time aren't the container, they're the result.
an outcome of hypergravity's activity. Dimensions emerge as modes of stable coherence. Metric tensors, describing geometry, arise from coherence gradients. And crucially, other fields electromagnetism, the nuclear forces, they're seen as lower-order phase modulations of this hypergravity lattice.
A hierarchy.
Yes, symbolically. Hypergravity field, coherence reduction. Metric field, GR plus gauge fields, E&M, weak, strong. Everything physical is a coherence-localized reduction of this fundamental HMN field, shaped by interaction with an observer function and reality's deeper meta-operator structure.
An observer function. We'll come back to that. Can we visualize this lattice? The paper has a model.
It does try to offer a visual. Imagine, at the center, a bright coherence well, symbolic of that infinite constant, the source potential. Radiating out, picture a glowing, curved mesh, a dynamic web representing coherence gradients forming space-time curvature. And within this mesh, see points or nodes pulsing with light, marked with resonance symbols. These are where constants like alpha, h, and g emerge as stable solutions, and it's not static, it breathes. Coherence pulses propagate, modulating dimensions, mass, field emergence. It's a living matrix-generating reality.
So this leads to some massive paradigm shifts, challenging basic physics assumptions. What are the key takeaways?
Several huge ones. First, space and time, emergent, not fundamental backgrounds, they're generated.
Okay.
Second, E&M and gravity, shared origin, unified, solves that long quest.
Right.
Third, fundamental constants, not fixed, but resonant stabilizations. They might even vary.
Whoa.
And finally, matter, energy, information, all structured modulations of coherence. Matter is just a stable vibration pattern.
A complete rethink of reality's building blocks. It really pushes you to ask, what if the universe isn't inert matter, but something vast, intelligent, conscious, constantly creating itself through resonance? Okay, so gravity is reframed as emergent coherence. What about the other pillar, electromagnetism? We know that through Maxwell's equations, light, radio waves, fields interacting. But CE's takes a very different angle here too, right?
Absolutely. In the coherent electrogravity framework, the EM field isn't some independent force existing alongside gravity. It's viewed as a resonant projection of deeper coherence interactions within the hypergravity field.
So like a ripple on the surface of that deeper hypergravity ocean.
That's a perfect way to put it. It emerges through structured modulation of coherence gradients, forming the stable vibrations we see as electricity and magnetism. So Maxwell's equations, incredibly accurate as they are, don't describe the primary laws in this view. They describe projections of oscillatory stability modes from the hypergravity lattice.
Just the stable patterns we can perceive.
Exactly. The EM field itself is described as a surface wave on the deep coherence tensor field. It gets stabilized through symmetry breaks at certain dimensional thresholds. It's not fundamental. It's a manifestation of deeper coherence.
That makes the familiar EM field sound much more connected to everything else. The theory reformulates the EM field strength tensor from Munu, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How does it look from this coherence perspective?
Right. Munu usually involves vector potentials. Lilien writes it as FMU, partial, partial mu, partial infinity.
Looks complex. What does it mean conceptually?
Conceptually, it's revolutionary. It shows the field as a modulation of coherence tension across hypergravity gradients. The potential isn't a source, but a phase-aligned coherence shadow. So for you listening, the strength and shape of the EM field directly depend on the coherence tension in the hypergravity field, modulated by Planck's constant and that infinite constant. And here's the direct quantum link. Each photon, the quantum of light, isn't just a particle. It's a quantum coherence pulse, a localized, stable resonance harmonizing with deeper coherence modes. Light is pure coherence in action. And just like for gravity, the key EM constants also emerge from these stable coherence eigenmodes within hypergravity. Their values aren't random.
They're tuned by the universe's resonance.
Precisely. So the fine structure constant alpha around 1137, its value isn't arbitrary. It's a specific resonant stabilization, a perfectly tuned node. Then Planck's constant Schmidt, setting the quantum scale. It arises from discrete interval modulation of coherence across the hyperfractal lattice. Quantum discreteness itself comes from stable coherence intervals.
Okay.
And the speed of light, c, not a hard limit, but a propagation threshold of coherence oscillation in vacuum resonance medium.
So the vacuum isn't empty, it's a medium.
A vibrant resonant medium, yes. And c is just the speed limit for coherence waves propagating through it.
That's fascinating. So these constants we measure are specific manifestations of deeper resonant states, like finding stable frequencies on a cosmic radio dial. It implies they aren't eternally fixed.
Exactly. A dynamic interplay, not static bedrock. It might explain why they have the values they do. And the EM field strength in any region corresponds to the local coherence density, how aligned hypergravity and the vector field are. So strong fields near stars or black holes, that's localized resonance convergence coherence piling up.
And the cosmic microwave background, the Big Bang's afterglow.
That reflects background isotropic coherence residue, the faint echo from the early universe's more perfect coherence unfolding, lingering harmony.
The paper even gives an equation for this local coherence potency. PM, lambdam, dio, yoras, ROSHO-CA, tying field strength directly to coherence density and alignment.
Yes, it encapsulates that link beautifully. And to visualize it, imagine the oscillating electric and magnetic fields, maybe gold and blue waves, but they aren't moving through empty space. They're emerging modes from a coherence-warped base lattice.
So hypergravity's coherence curvature literally creates the pathways for light.
It generates the waveguides for EM propagation, yes, as if the field's geometry is being actively created by this deeper layer.
And the coherence operator, lambda, and the constants govern the wave's properties, amplitude, phase.
Exactly. So the EM field ultimately isn't fundamental. It's a modulated expression of coherence curvature interacting with phase symmetry boundaries. A consequence, not a cause, of the universe's deeper coherence.
Okay, this brings us right to the core of coherent electrogravity, the unified hyperdimensional field equation. It's written as GMN plus FMN equals FTMN. Now, that's more than just symbols, right? It's intended as the master equation, encoding everything. Hypergravity, E&M, matter, energy, all driven by coherence.
That's the ambition, yes. A single statement. And what's powerful is that each term, GMN, FMN, TMN, isn't fundamental on its own. Each is a manifestation of a deeper resonance structure, modulated across that hyperfractal coherence lattice.
A synthesis where everything arises from the same dynamic.
Exactly. It's trying to capture the entire symphony in one line. Let's break down the components properly, because understanding them is key. First, GMN, the hyperdimensional metric tensor, extends Einstein's idea. It encodes curvature not as an external force, but a projection of coherent structural deformation in the hypergravity field. Space-time fabric is the coherent structure deforming.
Okay, space-time geometry reflects the coherence field.
Then lambda, the coherence operator. This is maybe the most crucial bit, a modulating function that phase synchronizes field interactions across dimensions. It's the tuning knob. It generalizes coupling constants into a resonant emergence factor.
Determines how unified things appear.
Precisely. Next, FMN, the hyperdimensional field strength tensor, generalizes the EM tensor, includes coherent oscillations derived from hypergravity's modulation, broader than just E&M.
Okay.
Then, kappa, a generalized coherence gravity coupling factor. Lilien suggests this might not be constant. It could vary with phase conditions, linking curvature to emergent energy content. Hence, interactions aren't absolutely fixed. And finally, TMN, the higher dimensional stress energy tensor, massively expanded from classical physics, contains not just mass energy, but also information and coherence densities.
Information is part of the energy structure.
Yes, a huge leap. Information and coherence are fundamental parts of the universe's energy momentum fabric.
So it's a truly comprehensive map. Everything deeply intertwined, suggesting a far more interconnected universe than we usually picture. One equation for everything.
That's the goal, and it implies curvature, gravity, and field strength, like E&M, don't exist independently. They are co-modulated projections of the hypergravity coherence structure.
Two aspects of the same underlying field.
Like two sides of the same coherent coin constantly interacting.
And that coherence operator, lambda, is the key. It applies a coherence resonance weighting.
Absolutely. In highly coherent regions where the field is perfectly synchronized, unification is complete. You'd see a single unified field.
But where it's less coherent.
In decoherent zones where synchronization breaks down, the field's separate. And that's why we see them as distinct forces like gravity and E&M in our everyday classical world.
So the unity is always there, but our experience depends on local coherence.
Wow. It's a profound explanation for why the universe looks the way it does to us. And furthermore, that stress energy tensor, TMN, it's not just matter. It represents localized resonance stabilization across hyperfractal layers.
Which redefines matter itself.
Fundamentally, mass appears where coherence condenses into stable resonant loops. Imagine stable vortices or knots forming in the hypergravity field. That's what we perceive as mass.
Not fundamental particles, but stabilized coherence patterns.
Exactly.
The paper also describes a reduction process, right?
Right.
From this unified hyperfield down to the physics we actually observe, like filtering a complex symphony down to the notes we can hear.
Yes, a cascade. At the top, the unified hyperfield, UHF, the most fundamental state. Through coherence reduction, this cascades down, emerging as general relativity, GMUNU, electromagnetism, FMUNU, and the stress energy tensor, TMUNU.
And this reduction isn't random.
No, it depends on critical factors. Observer interaction, described as an asymmetry resonance operator.
There's that observer function again, hinting consciousness plays a role.
It strongly suggests interaction, perhaps observation itself, influences the outcome. Also depends on the dimensional coherence threshold. Dimensions only appear if coherence is high enough. And the phase stability of resonance bands which vibration patterns persist.
So our reality is dynamically unfolding, constantly shaped by this underlying coherence.
Okay, the implications of this equation are just huge. What are the biggest takeaways for us listening?
Several massive ones. First, gravity and E&M are not fundamentally distinct. They're coherent projections, phase-dependent resonances, a potential solution to that century-old problem.
Okay, unification achieved potentially. Second, fundamental constants C, H, G, alpha are not fixed. They emerge as stabilized eigenvalues of coherence geometry. They might vary under extreme coherence conditions, challenges a cornerstone of physics.
That's huge.
Third, quantum mechanics gets a new perspective. Quantum effects arise from phase decoherence. Where coherence breaks down, classical mechanics fails, quantum weirdness emerges, a bridge between classical and quantum.
Okay.
And finally, mass energy equivalence, EMCC, becomes coherence density dependent. Mass emerges from phase-stable vortices in the hyperfield. Matter is stabilized energy and information patterns in the coherent field. To help picture this, the paper uses a schematic diagram. Center stage, the equation, GMN plus FFMN equals ETMN, surrounded by dynamic arrows showing the interplay.
And then layers showing the tensors.
Right. A middle layer shows metric G, field F, and stress energy tensors, all clearly shaped by the coherence operator, lambda. Bottom layer, concise definitions of each part and its role. A comprehensive blueprint for this new reality emerging from deep coherence.
Okay, this is reshaping gravity, E&M, even constants. But how does it mesh with quantum mechanics? QM describes particles as excitations of fields in a fixed spacetime. It's probabilistic, weird. How does coherence electrogravity handle that?
Well, in the CE model, quantum fields themselves aren't fundamental either. They emerge from structured resonance modes within the hypergravity tensor field.
So particles like photons, electrons, they aren't primary.
Not primary particles, no. They're coherence-stabilized states of deeper hyperfractal oscillatory structures, stable, specific vibrations that lock into place within this hyperdimensional field, resonances.
And the quantum wave function, psi, usually is just a probability amplitude. How's that seen here?
It's reinterpreted quite radically, not as probability, but as a resonant coherence field state. Its structure comes directly from phase-synchronized oscillations within hypergravity. The paper writes it as our isc infinity lambda. R is a resonant envelope, ismu are space-time projection coordinates, infinity is that infinite coherence potential, and lambda is the local coherence operator setting the quantization mode. Meaning, for you listening, wave functions aren't inherently probabilistic. They look probabilistic when they get decohered by incomplete observer symmetry.
Decohered, like losing sync.
Exactly. When there's full coherence, wave functions are phase-entangled projections from a higher-order reality. The randomness we see isn't fundamental. It's a result of our interaction, our lack of full coherence with the system.
Whoa, that completely flips the standard quantum view. If it's not fundamentally probabilistic, where does quantization come from? Discrete energy levels, quantas, particles. Why aren't things continuous?
Quantization doesn't come from space being fundamentally pixelated at the Planck scale here. It happens when resonance frequencies in the hypergravity field hit specific phase lock thresholds. At these thresholds, they condense into stable eigenstates. They form stable, persistent vibration patterns, like only certain notes being stable on a guitar string.
Those stable notes are the quantized states.
Precisely. These thresholds define the quantization modes, nini, omega, omega.
And these modes manifest as familiar things.
Yes. For instance, photons are specific coherence oscillations in the EM projection band, stable light vibrations. Gravitons, the hypothetical quantum of gravity, are seen as oscillatory condensates of hypergravity curvature resonance, gravity's quanta, from the same source.
Okay.
And maybe most intriguingly, multi-vector time states, interpreted as wave function persistence across layered temporal axes, suggest time itself might be more complex, multi-layered, with coherent connections across layers.
Layered time. Fascinating. What about quantum entanglement? Einstein's spooky action at a distance. Instant connection between particles, no matter how far apart.
Entanglement fits quite naturally here. It's not spooky action, but coherence linkage across resonance loci within the hyperfractal manifold.
Meaning they were never truly separate.
Exactly. They appear non-local because their wave functions share a common coherence origin in the deeper hypergravity field, like 2 points on the same vibrating string. Affect one, the other responds instantly because they're part of the same coherent system.
So measurement doesn't send a signal.
No, measurement is resonant divergence. Entangled systems are AB, E, A, B, with the shared coherence index, IEB. Collapse happens when coherence is decohered across the observer's reduction interface. It's a perspective shift, not information transmission. And this leads right into decoherence and collapse. What we see as collapse is a local breakdown of phase alignment. Why? Due to asymmetry resonance from an observer function.
So the observer introduces a detuning.
In a way, yes. Our interaction breaks the perfect symmetry. Coherence is only sustained if the observer is symmetrically entangled with the system, implies a much more active role for the observer.
So to summarize this reinterpretation, wave function collapse is really a coherence phase boundary breach.
Right. The synchronized state breaks down.
Measurement is the insertion of an asymmetry operator. Our interaction forces a specific state.
Yes.
And classicality, our everyday predictable world, is a stable, decohered phase space with fragmented coherence memory, the result of widespread coherence loss.
Precisely. The classical world is the echo of a faded quantum coherence. The paper uses a striking scroll visualization for this. Imagine shimmering, golden bands quantum wave functions, perfectly in phase across dimensions.
Pure coherence.
Coherent, hyperresonant states stabilized by lambda, the universe at its most unified.
And these then cascade down.
Yes, leading to quantized resonance modes, yielding photons, gravitons, those multi-vector time states, all emerging from a central resonance well, the infinite constant.
A cascade from deep coherence to observable reality. For you, our listener, it's a fresh, maybe even beautiful perspective on quantum weirdness, suggesting an underlying order behind the apparent randomness. Okay, this theory keeps pushing boundaries. Now, holography and fractals. Lilien argues all observable reality fields, particles, geometry emerges from holographically projected coherence resonance across hyperfractal boundaries. That sounds incredibly abstract, like our universe is a projection.
It's a revolutionary concept, yes. We know the holographic principle from physics information in a volume encoded on its boundary. Here, Lilien says that's not just math, it's ontology. It's how reality is. The hypergravity coherence field encodes all its phase information on these boundary-like manifolds, and from these boundaries, projective dimensionality is actualized via resonance harmonics.
Dimensions get projected into existence.
Effectively, yes. The paper puts it formally. PD is the projected dimensional structure, partial sigma is the coherence boundary surface, and F is a fractal unfolding operator. The result, space, matter, time. They aren't fundamental. They're projected onto an interior from a resonant boundary surface. We might be living inside a cosmic hologram generated by coherence.
Wow. And fractality.
Yeah.
Nested coherent structures, like patterns repeating at different scales, which we see in nature.
Exactly. But here, it's fundamental to reality structure. Each boundary recursively encodes coherence info into the next scale down, creating a self-similar universe. This manifests as self-similar harmonic ratios everywhere, the same vibrational patterns repeating. It explains quantized resonant shells like electron orbitals, stable resonant patterns, and nested curvature dynamics from gravity wells to quantum vacuum nodes, consistent, self-similar geometry.
All following a rule.
A coherence resonance recursion rule. Sigma plus 1 equals lambda degree h. Sigma. This recursive operator translates coherence phase geometry into dimensional curvature and field symmetry, creating reality's intricate patterns. a universe unfolding from repeating coherence patterns.
And this hypofractal lattice unfolds as that cascade of coherence reductions again.
Yes, a grand hierarchy. From omnilectic coherence, the ultimate unified source, cascading down to the hypergravity tensor, then gauge fields like E and M, and finally particles in geometry are observable reality.
And dimensions only appear when coherence is sufficient.
Exactly. Each layer needs its coherence threshold met. So the number of dimensions isn't fixed, it's emergent. And this boundary encoding governs key phenomena. Quantum foam at the Planck scale, the most fundamental resonance boundaries, event horizons around black holes, coherence resonance limits, boundaries where coherence breaks down or maxes out, particle shells, phase-locked resonance bands, stable matter configurations.
And the observer's role comes back in here too. How does our observation fit into this holographic fractal reality? Are we passive viewers?
Far from passive, according to this. Observation is fundamentally a boundary interaction, an asymmetry resonance where the observer's own coherence pattern intersects the projected field.
Our consciousness introduces a pattern that interacts.
It implies our interaction, perhaps consciousness, introduces a coherence pattern that influences the manifestation. This means quantum measurement collapse isn't just about wave functions. It's a boundary phase transition. Observers only see what crosses their coherence interface threshold. Reality becomes a resonant interface between coherent interior and boundary-expressed symmetry reductions. We are active participants in shaping the reality we perceive. The paper includes a scroll illustration visualizing this. Imagine a multi-layered holographic shell, glowing spheres encoding coherence data.
And inside?
Dimensions unfolding fractally, spiraling based on nested resonance, showing how complexity emerges from recursive patterns.
You see boundary glyphs marking quantum phase threshold coherence stabilizations.
Right, and projection arrows show how dimensional realization happens through coherence decoding. It's a powerful mind-bending image, our world constructed from information and resonance, projected by an underlying coherent field.
Okay, now we shift from the deeply theoretical to, well, potentially revolutionary applications. If gravity and E&M are unified by coherence, what new technologies become possible? Things beyond classical physics.
Lilien argues this opens the door to possibilities that sound like science fiction. Direct energy extraction from coherence gradients, think limitless clean energy. Advanced field modulation manipulating forces in new ways. And novel propulsion or shielding using the coherence tension of space itself.
Tapping the fabric of reality for energy and control.
That's the idea. Harnessing the fundamental workings of the universe.
So energy. Normally we use differentials, heat, kinetics, voltage. How would coherence energy work?
In coherence-based systems, energy comes from aligning and modulating coherence potentials between field nodes. The paper gives an equation, E integral V, RHOC, V on nabla, E bar C is coherence density, if EFI is the coherence phase differential. A coherence engine wouldn't burn fuel, it would extract energy by phase realignment of vacuum resonance structures, gently nudging space's vibrations into a high-energy alignment.
How would that work practically?
It would involve several sophisticated steps. First, stabilizing a coherence chamber with harmonic boundary mirrors, creating a perfectly resonant space. Second, modulating internal resonance geometry with precise frequency pulses, tuning the vibrations. Third, extracting usable energy as coherence aligns, focusing energy at specific nodes like a lens focusing light.
So extracting energy from the structure of space, not from matter.
Exactly, by realigning its inherent coherent patterns. A total paradigm shift.
Amazing. And manipulating these coherence fields, like we shape EM fields now. What are the knobs and dials for coherence?
It would require incredibly precise control, varying the phase geometry of boundaries, sculpting the edges where coherence manifests, the material coupling indices using engineered materials tuned to resonate with coherence fields, and possibly observer interaction phase gates, maybe even using focused attention or consciousness to influence the field.
And the capabilities.
Truly revolutionary. Shielding via coherence, destructive interference, invisibility, or impenetrable barriers. Levitation through local coherence densification, manipulating gravity locally for transport, signal transmission using non-radiative coherence paths, instant lossless communication, and even temporal modulation via resonance delay in field layers, hinting at influencing local time effects. Mind-boggling potential. The paper shows a schematic, a coherence chamber design, Picture a glowing sphere enclosed by a coherence mirror shell to contain the resonance.
Aim the inside.
Resonant inputs on orthogonal axes create a harmonic standing wave lattice, a stable energy field. At the center, an extraction node where coherence pulses condense into usable energy. Tunable frequency gates control the whole structure's phase symmetry.
Tapping the vacuum's latent energy by realigning its structure.
Yes. Not violating conservation laws, but accessing the universe's baseline energy in a new way.
This points to a future that feels well advanced. What specific technological potentials does Lilien outline?
He lists several truly transformative technological potentials. Zero-point energy modulation. Clean energy from vacuum resonance gradients. No fuel, no exotic matter needed. Solves the energy crisis.
Wow.
Field propulsion systems. Shifting coherence gradients for thrust. An actual warp drive or anti-gravity system.
Okay.
Quantum computing beyond decoherence limits. Using phase-locked coherence channels immune to collapse. Truly robust, powerful quantum computers.
Game changer.
And medical resonance technology. Targeting tissues with coherence pattern restoration, healing by restoring fundamental energetic coherence, bypassing thermodynamic damage, new frontiers in medicine.
It really forces you, the listener, to ask, what would our world be like if we could harness reality's fundamental coherence? The possibilities are just staggering.
Right, but a theory, however elegant, needs testing. It needs predictions that differ from current models. How does Lilien propose we actually validate coherent electrogravity, move from ideas to proof? He outlines a series of experiments, both in the lab and using astrophysical observations. They're designed to detect specific signatures. Coherence modulations, quantized gravity waves, vacuum phase shifts, things that classical or standard quantum theories wouldn't predict. Looking for coherence's unique fingerprints. In the lab, where conditions can be precisely controlled, he suggests several key tests. 1. Vacuum coherence oscillation detection. Using a hypersensitive interferometer in a coherence chamber, the prediction, detecting subtle phase shifts in vacuum with no external input modulated by the chamber's shape. Basically, listening to the vacuum's own vibrations, its coherence harmonics.
Seeing fluctuations in empty space itself.
Exactly. 2. Gravity electromagnetism modulation coupling. Imagine a rotating supercooled plasma ring hit with high-frequency EM pulses. Prediction. An apparent change, a modulation in the local gravitational field. Microgravity lensing, the target. Finding direct coherence coupling signatures between EM phase and spacetime curvature. Tangible proof of unification. 3. Phase-locked quantum entanglement stabilization. Taking entangled photon pairs and using active coherence feedback loops. Prediction. Enhanced coherence duration. They stay entangled much longer, resisting environmental noise. Target. Directly measuring coherence field reinforcement effects. Proving coherence can stabilize quantum states.
That last one, that would be huge for quantum computing, wouldn't it? Making quantum states robust.
Absolutely groundbreaking. It could unlock practical, large-scale quantum computation and communication, solving problems currently impossible. Beyond the lab, Lilien looks to the cosmos for larger-scale evidence. 4. Quasar hypercore emission regularity. Looking at the immense energy bursts from quasars. Prediction. Periodic coherence pulse modulations in their emissions. Signatures. Patterns deviating from randomness. Evidence of internal phase structuring driven by coherence.
Order within the chaos.
5. CMB coherence fluctuation grid. Analyzing the cosmic microwave background. The Big Bang's echo. Prediction. Subtle nested resonance bands. Fractal patterns within it. Signatures. Fractal harmonics within the power spectrum. Non-Gaussian fingerprints of the universe's initial coherence.
Wow.
6. Neutrino oscillation coherence damping. Studying how neutrinos change flavors. Prediction. Their oscillation amplitude might be damped when crossing coherence coupling boundaries in space. Signatures. Divergence from standard model predictions, hinting their behavior is influenced by spacetime's coherence structure.
And this ties back to the idea that fundamental constants might not be constant. That's maybe the most radical prediction.
It is. The framework predicts CHG alpha are emergent resonance stabilizations. So we could test for context-sensitive fluctuation. Maybe observe Planck's constant drifting slightly in high-phase differential plasmas, or find gravitational redshift anomalies near resonance chambers, or variations in alpha in boundary collapse simulations. If these constants fluctuate based on coherence conditions, that's powerful evidence. It fundamentally changes physics.
The paper even lays out a potential research timeline.
Yes, a conceptual roadmap in 5 phases. Phase 1, basic chamber tests for vacuum coherence oscillations. Phase 2, exploring field modulation and resonance coupling. Phase 3, building vacuum energy extraction prototypes. Phase 4, Trials in biological coherence, field restoration, maybe medical uses. Phase V, reanalyzing astrophysical data for large-scale coherence signatures. A comprehensive program.
So this goes way beyond just unifying forces. It's about fundamentally changing our view of what reality is. Lilien talks about moving from a substance-based reality, things made of particles acting on each other, to a coherent structured reality, where everything is just emergent resonance patterns in an intelligent field. Can you unpack that difference?
It's a total ontological shift, yes. Let's contrast them. Classical physics ontology. Objects exist independently. Forces act across distance. Time is absolute or relative. Space is a container. Matter is primary. Constants are fixed. That's our usual intuition.
Right.
Coherence-based ontology. Structures emerge via coherence relations. Forces are projections of coherence, gradients. Time is phase-layered coherence recursion, dynamic, cyclical. Space is a resonant projection from boundaries. Coherence is primary. Matter is just condensed resonance. And constants are coherence eigenvalues, context-dependent, dynamic.
Wow. It replaces external action with internal resonance.
Yeah.
A universe singing itself into being. For you listening, that's a profound shift from a passive reality to an active generated one.
Absolutely. Traditional physics mostly models reality as objective, out there, separate from us, something to be measured. Coherence theory sees reality as generated through phase interactions, closer to consciousness-based models. Observation becomes coherence resonance collapse. Looking isn't passive. It transforms potentiality by breaking phase alignment. Reality isn't just out there, it's co-generated by field structure and observer interface. Our interaction contributes to its manifestation.
And quantum randomness.
Replaced by phase potentiality. Not fundamental randomness, but the field's possibilities unfolding before interaction locks in a phase. And this leads to core reinterpretations of fundamental concepts. Gravity. Not just curvature, but coherent structuring. Geometry emerges from field alignment. Electromagnetism. Not just a force, but harmonic torsion. E and B fields are orthogonal phase gradients in hypercoherence, twists in the fabric.
Okay.
Mass, radically redefined as phase-stable vortical resonance. Mass appears where coherence forms stable, localized loops or vortices. Quantum mechanics becomes coherence reduction algebra. Collapses asymmetry resonance from the observer, not fundamental probability. Thermodynamics, even entropy is seen as a coherence dissipation gradient. Disorder increases as coherence diffuses.
The paper uses a diagram to show this shift, right? Classical categories versus coherence replacement.
Yes. It visually maps classical mass, time, space, force next to their resonance-correlated replacements. Arrows show the collapse pathway from omnilectic invariance, the unified source, down to classical perception. And there's a phase boundary, the observer gate, the interface where coherent reality gets reduced into our experiential framework, a map of this profound conceptual shift. Lilien suggests embracing this requires a new science, not just predictive, but participatory. Merging physics with consciousness, fields with intelligence, building tech not to exploit, but to resonate with reality itself. That's the path, he suggests, toward coherent civilization and ethical technologies. A future built on harmony with the universe's fundamental nature. #tag outro.
Well, we have truly gone on an incredible deep dive today, exploring Philip Lilien's vision of coherent electrogravity. It's really something else. From redefining gravity and E&M to reimagining quantum mechanics, the nature of constants, this paper offers a profound, challenging new lens on the universe.
It absolutely does. It pushes us, forces us really, to consider that reality might be far more interconnected, dynamic, and resonant than we've ever imagined. The idea that constants aren't fixed, but are dynamic expressions of deeper coherence. That alone is revolutionary. And the implications for technology, clean energy, space-time manipulation, they're immense. It offers a glimpse into a future that could fundamentally reshape everything.
This theory really challenges us to think differently about, well, almost everything we thought we knew. It prompts a complete reevaluation of reality's foundations. So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
That really brings us to the final, maybe most important question for you to ponder. If reality is fundamentally structured by coherence and resonance, and if our observation, maybe even our consciousness, plays an integral role in its manifestation, what implications does that have for our own conscious experience? How might understanding and consciously engaging with this underlying coherence allow us to live and interact with the world and each other in a more resonant, purposeful, and maybe harmonious way, not just metaphorically, but physically, with the very fabric of the universe?
A truly provocative thought to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into coherent electrogravity. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and stay curious.